and welcome to the Newsx Sunday Guardian Roundtable. Well, the US-Israel-Iran war is now entering its 8th week and there seems to be no ready hopes of a reconciliation. The second round of talks did not materialize, though of course the US President Donald Trump says that he has extended the ceasefire indefinitely. There is also a ceasefire in place between Lebanon and Israel. But at the end of the day, the ground reality is hitting everybody all over the world. Oil prices are rising even in the US, and perhaps that should hurt Trump. He says he's not under any pressure, he has no timeline, but his own senators, his own Republicans are putting pressure on him. How long will this last? And more importantly, what is the way out? What can we hope to expect, and where does India stand in all this? Joining me in the conversation today, I have with me Ambassador Kanwal Sibal, who's also been the former Foreign Secretary of India. I have Ambassador Pavan Varma, he's also been a Rajya Sabha MP. And I have Dr. Sanjaya Baru, who's an author, former editor, and he's been the former advisor to Dr. Manmohan Singh, media advisor Dr. Manmohan Singh. But Ambassador Sibal, where do we stand really, in terms of the war? Where do you see it going?
Couple of things. One is that there is no clear picture how Trump can end this conflict. I think he has mishandled it very badly. He thought that he would be able to, after decapitation of the Iranian leadership and bombing out the nuclear facilities, he would bring Iran to its heel. And also perhaps felt that because earlier on there were street demonstrations and riots against the regime, he felt that this would be enough reason for another uprising promoted by Israel and United States operatives, and therefore there would be a regime change. Now that has not happened. What surprises me is, and he has admitted that publicly, that two things surprised him. One, that Iran attacked the Gulf states, and number two, that they closed the Strait of Hormuz.
You're surprised by that?
I mean, any chap in any think tank anywhere who was to examine what would be the asymmetrical reaction of the Iranians would have said precisely these two things. So obviously, he's badly advised. Now, again, he's been changing his mind. He said that it doesn't matter whether the Strait of Hormuz is open or not, because he's not dependent, others are, and those who are, they should prize it open. And then he also has massed his troops, and the feeling was that he might actually occupy Karg Island, which would then necessitate his controlling the coastline also, which means putting feet on the ground as a way to prize open the Strait of Hormuz. Then he said that he's not going to blockade the Strait of Hormuz, and finally he has blockaded the Strait of Hormuz. This blockade is not effective. It is not effective because it's a very wide area. If you want to really blockade it, you need a lot of frigates and other things in large numbers to cover that space and monitor the movement of ships who put off their transponders and everything else. With an aircraft carrier, you can't do it. So this is not going to work. Number two, Iran already has about 180 million barrels of oil on the oceans because they had anticipated this. So that oil is going to flow to whichever destination it can go and cannot be interdicted. So Iran is going to get some revenue from this. But Iran's biggest, and perhaps they didn't realize it, the most effective handle is the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. It creates a huge problem for the international community. And it's a low-cost option for them because they can interdict ships. All they need is one drone here and there to threaten a tanker, and the tankers will stop coming. So they are sitting pretty. They have all the cards in their hand. And even if Trump decides to bomb them back to the Stone Age, as he says, and things like that, it's not going to be easy. It'll be a decision which will cost the United States enormously because the price of oil will shoot up because Iran is going to react. It'll attack the oil facilities of the Gulf countries. Correct. And if he starts attacking the desalination plants, then we have a problem. We've got 10 million people in that region and the oil price is already at $102 a barrel, which if it continues for 5-6 months is going to create huge economic issues for us. We are actually very badly suffering because of what our so-called friends, United States and Israel, have done.
But that's the next question I'll come back to in the second round on the India stand and what are the options before us. But as of now, Pavan, who has the leverage really in this 8 weeks into the war?
Well, frankly, no one has the leverage. You see, I entirely agree with what Ambassador Sibal said, that the United States completely miscalculated its attack on Iran, believing perhaps on the story sold by Israel that it will be a quick war, there will be a regime change, you target the top leaders. But Iran, is, as I have written recently, is a civilizational state, huge landmass, 90 million people. You can't just take over Iran.
Yeah.
So, your question, because of shortage of time, see, in any kind of conflict, there comes at one point a situation where two things happen. Neither of the protagonists in the conflict, be it the United States, Israel, or Iran, and collaterals around, realize that there can be a conclusive end to this war in favor of any one person. And by now, each of them has enough reason to try and convey to their domestic constituencies that it has been a victory. US can say we've degraded Iran, we've destroyed some of their nuclear building capabilities, they have come begging to the table. Iran can say, what has the US been able to achieve? We've achieved what we had said, we will not bow down to them. And similarly, Israel, a very unpopular regime in my view, within the country, can say that they have managed to contain Iran. So when this situation arises, that you cannot continue the war without huge risks involved, which no one wants to bear, and there is no conclusive possibility to end the war as per objectives defined earlier, and each side has some reason to say that they have got a victory, then you are very close to a situation where you can find either a tactical pause, which will allow structured negotiations to continue, or a possible middle ground through the Islamabad mediation or any other forum to end the war. I think that's where we've reached. As far as India is concerned, since you want to defer it to the next round, I'll leave it here. But this is my own feeling that for all the bluster, we are closer to some resolution of this issue than it seems apparent at the moment.
Oh, good. At least you ended on somewhat of a silver lining. Would you agree with that, Dr. Baru?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with whatever has been said so far. But the point I would make in addition is that this is an important turning point globally in terms of American power, projection of American power.
Good point.
As if the surrender to Taliban in Afghanistan was not enough, the United States has come into West Asia and once again found that it is not capable of influencing events through military action in its favor. I mean, we have a history of American military action not serving the purposes which
In
were
no
the
case.
objectives, right? But I think this is important, and the role of China, for example, in providing a range of support to Iran suggests to me that the lessons to be drawn, as Pavan has said, both sides can say we have achieved some objectives. But I think in the long run, the real message from this conflict is that we are living through the decline of American power. I don't see how the United States' influence globally can increase as a result of the events of the last couple of months. If anything, other countries are already taking decisions in order to reduce their dependence on the United States. Other allies, I mean Europe, you take Europe for example. The European response to all of this has been to reduce its dependence on the United States. Japanese response has been to reduce its dependence on the United States. So I think the bigger picture is of a conflict that was not necessary, a war that could have been avoided, but pursued because of the limited objectives of Israel. You know, we have been talking only of the United States, but the trigger for this conflict is Israel. And Israel, in many ways, is an illegitimate power. It's an illegitimate nation. And it has held the region to ransom. And the United States has today worked with Israel to pursue a strategy which is really signaling the continued decline of American power. We in India should draw our lessons from this.
May I just add that I think the biggest gainer, first, I can't agree more that Netanyahu should be tried by an international court of law for genocide, for a variety of reasons which we can be a separate program with you. But the biggest gainer in all of this as a result of obvious American decline, in my view, is China. Today,
Yes.
China is controlling the talks that are going on in Islamabad. It has an iron cast relationship with Pakistan. It has very good relations with Iran. Secondly, China is watching the Economist headline, don't interrupt an enemy when it's making a mistake.
Correct.
It is watching America, the limitations to American power play themselves out. And China also, in my view, has cemented further its relationship with Russia. So today the Gulf countries are asking themselves that for two American pilots, if America can put together an entire armada to rescue them,
Right.
what happened when the Gulf was being attacked? Where was America? So they may be looking for some other umbrella to provide them the defense shield. And China is an obvious possibility in that situation. So China has watched, and I believe is the biggest gainer in this scenario.
The New World Order and China's role in this.
Well, you know, China can project power in the South China Sea, in the Western Pacific, in that area, very, very effectively. Because all their naval power, missile capabilities, other capabilities are in that area, and the entire objective is to push the US 7th Fleet, 6th, 7th Fleet, as far as possible from the coast of China. But for it to project any form of power outside that is going to be very, very difficult to sustain. First of all, they don't have bases. They only have one in Djibouti. But that's meaningless because other countries have bases there too. I mean, France has that, Turkey has that, what have you. So it's just a kind of a staging area, not really a base. Number two, how can they protect their naval assets thousands of miles away from their own shores? They don't have the capacity to do that.
Yeah.
Therefore, they cannot intervene physically, militarily, in providing security to anyone for the time being. Maybe 5-10 years later, I don't know. Number three, China is being very, very cautious, if you note. They are not supporting Iran. They are very,
Overtly.
very medium-mouthed because they are also looking at the equities in the Gulf. They have tremendous relationship with Saudi Arabia, with UAE and others, especially Saudi Arabia. That's why the Chinese foreign minister has gone to Saudi Arabia to try and balance things. And I'm a bit surprised. Russian statements on Iran are very supportive, very strong. But the Chinese are very muted, saying that the dialogue and all that, also that the Strait of Hormuz should be kept open. So they're not supporting Iran on this. So China knows its limitations for the time being, and therefore is not going to wade into this conflict. But I agree with them, both of them, that actually, because of the weakening of the United States and the self-inflicted wounds that Trump is inflicting on the US power, China will gain because they have tremendous economic heft. And mind you, if you look back a little bit, they played a role in the reconciliation between Iran and Saudi Arabia. So their political role is there. And therefore, at some stage, these countries will like to bring China in. Apart from the fact that their biggest market of oil in the future will be China. So they have great interest in keeping China on their side. But there is one issue here. Now, if they dispense with the US security cover, and China can't move in, it will not give that security cover. Then what do? Then they
Gulf
will come
countries.
under Iranian security cover. In fact, they will have to accept Iranian hegemony, which they are not going to accept. So willy-nilly, whatever it is, they would like to keep America.
So what I actually meant was not polarity, black or white, but usually transitions happen more less dramatically. They will diversify options, and China has seen the impunity with which the rules-based international order has been violated. It has drawn its own lessons vis-a-vis Taiwan also. In fact, there has been a development with regard to airspace covering Taiwan. Because it may not be that vociferous in its support to Iran, but everyone knows that weapon systems to Iran have come from China. And so therefore, I call this clever diplomacy, frankly, because it has a great interest in the Strait of Hormuz being open and it will exercise pressure on Iran. But it's in a position to do so via Pakistan or directly. Whereas many other countries have lost that leverage.
You know,
Okay.
on
Particularly
this,
Europe.
Sorry, no, please. No, on this, China, I remember Russia, Putin was asked during the 12-day war, why don't you support Iran more? And he said we had offered aid to Iran, but Iran did not accept it. They had their own way of thinking. They wanted to be self-reliant. This time he was asked again that why haven't you intervened in the favor of Iran? He said, what do you want me to fight the United States of America? I have a war already on my hands, but we are supporting Iran, and on the nuclear question, we will fully support them now and in the future. China certainly has given assistance, but you know, Iran are a very peculiar country. They want to be self-reliant. They've developed all these capacities themselves. They don't want to be reliant on others, but yes, intelligence and some other kinds of things that every country needs, even we need in terms to have a credible military production, manufacturing thing in our own country.
Yeah.
So to that extent, China will certainly, but they will be very, very cautious because they are not in a mode to actually seriously confront the United States of America.
They're not.
They're not. And they are this visit of Trump in May to China. I don't know whether it will take place or not take place, but they will not want to actually destabilize the ground for that visit. So they're going to play it cool.
That's a good note to take a break on. I'm going to come back and come back to Dr. Baru, but after a very quick break. Hello and welcome back to the Newsx Sunday Guardian Roundtable. We are of course taking a look at the Iran-US-Israel war and the implications thereof. China and US is one question I want you to handle, and also India's role really in all this.
Well, you know, frankly, I mean, I agree that Chinese would want a Trump visit. China would want a Trump visit. That too much at stake for China in the bilateral relationship. In fact, I keep making the point again and again that China-US relationships are at a higher level than India-US relationship and have been for a long, long time. So the Chinese have a lot of stake in that. But having said that, I think my concern today really is about the consequences for the Indian economy.
Yes.
The rise in LPG, the non-availability of LPG, the rise in oil prices, the slowing down of the economy. I mean, you know, urea, fertilizer prices, and then we are going to have El Nino factor with monsoon may fail. I was trying to find out from people in government whether there have been any serious internal assessments. And I was quite shocked to know that, for example, an institution like Niti Aayog has done no internal study of the impact of the war on the economy. There was one meeting of the Cabinet Committee on Security. I don't know if there was a second meeting. There's a group of ministers now chaired by the Defense Minister, which includes the Petroleum Minister and the Finance Minister. We don't know what they're doing. At least the newspaper media does not report whether this group is meeting, whether the Security Council has met again, what instructions have been given by the government, by the Prime Minister to the rest of the government to prepare for a failure of monsoon, very high prices of energy prices sustaining into the next half of the year, the impact on economic growth, the impact on foreign exchange reserves, the impact on the rupee. I mean, the scenarios, today for the first time I saw in the Indian Express an excellent article by a young economist, I forget her name, a woman economist, in fact raising all these questions. I have not seen, a systematic analysis in the media as well. The fact is, we have lived through situations like this in the past. When we had 1990, the Iraq War, then we had the Gulf War. We have now enough experience that when there's a war in the Gulf, the immediate consequences for the Indian economy are negative. And any increase in oil prices sucks away a percentage of the GDP out of the system, right? So the estimate I saw in this morning's analysis, 0.5% of GDP. So if you're looking at the year ending with 6.5, it will be 6, not 6.5, right? 0.5% of GDP is a significant number, right? Now, the question I have is, given all of this, what role have we played, one, in preventing this? When the Prime Minister goes to Israel, 3 days before the attack, what role did we play in actually safeguarding our interests? After the attack, in the immediate week after that attack, the National Security Council met a week after the attack. What were they doing for that 1 week after the attack? Did they think that, the US and Israel will walk through into Tehran and take over Israel and Iran and the war will be over? Like, Putin thought he could walk into Kiev in 4 days, right? So, what has been our preparation to deal with the economic consequence? Because we have lived through in the past 2 wars in the Gulf in our living memory when the Indian economy has taken a serious hit.
Yeah.
Here we have a government that is so preoccupied with provincial state elections and not, at least in the public eye. I mean, I'm outside, I read the newspapers to understand what's happening. In the public eye, you don't get that kind of a focus on the medium to long-term consequences. Forget long-term, the medium-term consequence. This financial year will be a disaster. Your fiscal deficit will certainly be above what is estimated. So I think the consequences for Indian economy of this war are serious, and I don't see an application of mind to that seriousness.
But as you know all too well, all our reforms are accidental. So maybe this
Well, I mean, I hope something comes out of this.
I hope so too. But Pavan, your reaction to India's reaction to?
You see, I hesitate to speak on foreign policy because by and large, it should be a matter of national consensus. But frankly, I am flummoxed at some of the policy options we chose. I entirely agree that we gain little by alienating the United States. We don't gain much by sort of barging into somebody else's war.
Correct.
But here our national interest coincides directly with the spread of the conflagration and the containment and, in fact, the conclusion of the war. It's not about principles. If our principles are non-aggression, sovereignty, the peaceful resolution of disputes, it is entirely congruent with the situation we face with China. National interest is that there should be peace and stability in the Gulf because so many of our economic interests are tied with that region, including, as you mentioned, 10 million people of Indian origin, our oil supplies and much else. In such a situation, to remain silent at the time of the attack, not condemn it. Subsequently, when there was the targeted assassination of the head of state of a friendly country with whom we have diplomatic relations, our inexplicable silence for some time at least, I believe in some ways, in spite of the best intentions, I'm sure, we have abdicated the role that a country of a size and importance like India could have played. I don't care what Pakistan does.
We're not hyphenated.
Jaishankar Saab may call it a dalal. It may be. It's a tin pot dictatorship with a crumbling polity and economy. But we are India. And I have said this before. I believe 1.4 billion people, one of the largest economies of the world's largest democracy with aspirations to sit with the high table of the world. We have to do more. Where are we working the phone line? Why have we not done more of our friends of diplomacy with Mr. Donald Trump and so on and so forth, or with our good friend Netanyahu. Our interest lies in ending this war. Unfortunately, for some reason, the role that we could have played, even as chairman of BRICS,
That's a
we could have convened an emergency session of BRICS to pass a resolution for the immediate cessation of hostilities.
correct.
But somehow we've taken a backseat, which in my view is neither congruent to our national self-interest, nor have we lived up to the idealism which was one of the criticisms of Indian foreign policy, that we are always sermonizing to others. No, what we believe in actually is very, very relevant to our national interest. So that's my analysis.
Very candid analysis. But Ambassador Sibal, to you, the last word. Have we, we did do a course correction, as first week we didn't, but we have reached out. Have we?
See, we have to also see the realities on the ground. We don't have that kind of equation with Trump. Trump is a problem for us. He's a problem for us.
You're calling it out.
In fact, he wants mediation between India and Pakistan. He's proposed that in the past. And the manner in which he continues to talk about how he arranged a ceasefire, 60, 70 times he said that, and the latest was I saved 35 to 50 million people from being killed, etc., etc. You can't talk to that man, because if you offered some kind of a mediatory role, then you are laying yourself open to his asking India to also give him that kind of a role between India and Pakistan,
That's a good
especially
point.
because of his fascination with his favorite field marshal, whom he is actually privileging over the civilian prime minister of the country. Even in his tweets, even now when he said that I have agreed to this ceasefire at the request of the field marshal and the prime minister Sharif,
Correct.
he gives precedence. That is one. The other is that we have spoken, foreign minister has spoken several times to the Iranian foreign minister. Toval has just been to Saudi Arabia. We are in touch with the leadership, we are in touch with the Europeans on this also. So to the extent that behind the scenes we can make our views known, because it is costing everybody.
Right.
We are doing that. But we would have actually hoped that the Oman mediation would have been successful, because Oman was very well placed to do that. And it appears from the Omani foreign minister's own statements, interviews, an article in The Economist, that the Iranians actually made very major concessions beyond the JCPOA. But Trump rejected it. Now, he sent Vance, the second most important political personality in the United States, to go and talk in Islamabad with the Iranians.
Right.
And he couldn't achieve anything, because Trump said, and he said that Vance told me, he said, no, I don't want 90% or 95%, I want 100% satisfaction. It's an ultimatum. He doesn't want negotiation, he wants the humiliation of Iran. And therefore, the Pakistani mediation is not going to go anywhere. The situation is now pretty frozen. And in this situation, all we can do is to, behind the scenes, keep talking about trying to end this war, creating a momentum in that favor without exposing ourselves too much, because there is a problem here. When Pavan was right about talking about the BRICS meeting. Our people officially have said that we have not been able to achieve a consensus because Iran and the UAE are member of BRICS. So how do you have a statement which will reconcile the views of both countries, especially as UAE is being very aggressive, unlike Saudi Arabia and others who are, and Qatar especially. Qatar is saying that we don't want any conflict with Iran, and we will want the United States to move its base out of Qatar. But UAE is actually pressing for more attacks on Iran because they see the future that they'll have to live under the hegemony of Iran, which they don't want. Now, in this situation, given that UAE is our pivot for our Gulf policy, how do we reconcile these two things? These are practical diplomatic
Just
problems.
two questions
Though
before.
I agree, generally speaking, with what has been said, that we could have theoretically played a more important role, but I think there are limitations.
In terms of optics, yeah, but you have
Just
both of you want to have.
two quick comments. First of all, being more active on the international stage is not tantamount to seeking to mediate. So I don't think the Pakistan-India mediation issue is a thing. And the second question I asked both you and Sanjay, do you think somewhere our foreign policy establishment overestimated the friendship with an individual who happens to be the chief executive of the United States?
Well, I'm not worried about our overestimating or underestimating our relationship with Trump and the US. I'm seriously concerned about the way in which we have handled Netanyahu. And I think that for India was a big, big mistake. It is a purely ideological approach taken by the current regime towards Israel. It does not serve the Indian national interest in that part of the world for us to be so closely identified with Israel.
My view is that unless you solve the Israel problem, you will not be able to solve this problem in the long run. Because who's going to put pressure on Netanyahu? Even today, the Katz, the Israeli foreign defense minister, has actually talked about bombing Iran back to the Stone Age. He just said it today. Now, if he is going to start, and the ceasefire with Lebanon, as you said, no, it's not really fully operational. Now, if they still have this view, and he said that we are waiting a signal from the United States to go ahead and start bombing Iran again. Now, if this is Israel's position, and they cannot be controlled, and they are going to be a country that is going to make sure that the situation never gets stabilized because they're looking only at their own security, as if Israel's security is the nub of global security, regional security and global security. This is not a position we or anybody else can accept. So you have to solve the Israeli problem, the Palestinian problem, the West Bank problem, the Syria problem, the Lebanon problem. Otherwise, this conflict will continue to fester.
And who gets to solve it? On that note, there is, with the United Nations not being able to play any role, is there anybody else who can solve this issue or not? I think that's probably a topic for the next discussion. But for that, thank you so much for watching this and for raising some very thought-provoking questions, including the one that India should really start getting ready for a very, very tough 2 years at least ahead. Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the Newsx YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.